As the Empire's fleet sat helplessly in space, surrounded by human vessels that could rewrite reality itself, Admiral Vexthar finally understood why the humans had been laughing. Commander Seung-woo appeared on the communication screens to explain the joke that had started this entire encounter. "Admiral," Seung-woo said with a gentle smile, "do you remember how your intelligence services discovered humanity? You intercepted what you thought were historical documentaries about human warfare. You saw our movies about ancient battles and assumed they showed our current military capabilities." Seung-woo activated a holographic display that showed the Empire's intelligence reports about humanity. The reports were filled with images from human entertainment, old war movies, video games about historical conflicts, and television shows about soldiers fighting with primitive weapons. To aliens, who did not understand human culture, these fictional stories looked like factual records of how humans fought their wars. Those were not documentaries, Seung-woo explained patiently. They were entertainment. Stories we tell for fun about wars that happened hundreds of years ago when we were still learning about science and technology. We broadcast them into space because we thought other species might enjoy watching our fictional adventures. The hologram showed the difference between the entertainment signals and the real scientific broadcasts that humanity had been sending into space. The Empire's computers had focused on the exciting war stories while ignoring the boring academic papers about dimensional physics, temporal manipulation, and quantum engineering. While you were studying our movies about World War II, Seung-woo continued, we were broadcasting our actual scientific achievements on completely different frequencies. Papers about faster-than-light travel, instructions for building gravity manipulators, and theories about weaponizing mathematics. Your intelligence services never bothered to listen to those signals because they were not as exciting as the fictional battles. Admiral Mi-young took over the explanation, her voice filled with the same amusement that had started the human laughter hours earlier. Your Empire's conquest pattern is so predictable that our computers calculated your arrival date 3 years in advance. We knew exactly when you would appear, what ultimatum you would give, and what threats you would make. The entire human defense network was specifically designed to counter your exact tactical doctrine. She showed Admiral Vexthar a timeline that tracked the Empire's expansion over the past century. Human computers had analyzed every battle, every conquest, and every strategic decision the Empire had made. The analysis revealed that the Empire used the same basic strategy against every species they encountered, with only minor variations based on local conditions. You always arrive with overwhelming numerical superiority, Mi-young explained. You always demand immediate surrender. You always threaten to destroy the entire civilization if they refuse. You always give exactly 72 hours for a response. You have been using this same approach for over 500 years. Captain Wu Jin provided more details about humanity's preparations. His stealth ship had been monitoring Empire activities for months, studying their ships and learning their weaknesses. But Wu Jin had not been alone. Dozens of human vessels had been quietly observing the Empire's rear guard and supply lines, mapping their entire military structure. We have been inside your computer systems for quite some time, Wu Jin admitted. Every critical system in your fleet has been infiltrated by self-replicating nanobots that we introduced months ago. We could shut down your ships, disable your weapons, or take control of your life support systems whenever we choose. We have been able to destroy your entire fleet since before you even entered human space. To demonstrate, Wu Jin caused every Empire ship to play the same song simultaneously through their internal communication systems. The song was a cheerful human tune about friendship and cooperation, completely inappropriate for a military confrontation. The fact that humanity could control the Empire's most secure systems well enough to play music through them proved that the aliens were completely at human mercy. But the biggest joke of all, Dr. Arin said, as she appeared on a new communication screen, is that humanity has not been alone in preparing for your arrival. Dr. Arin worked from a laboratory that looked like it belonged in a science fiction movie. Floating displays showed star charts and communication networks that stretched across the entire galaxy. She was small and quiet, but her eyes held secrets that could reshape entire civilizations. We have been in contact with 23 of the species your empire has conquered, Dr. Arin revealed. Using our dimensional manipulation technology, we have been secretly communicating with resistance movements across the galaxy. We have been providing them with weapons, supplies, and hope. The star chart showed hidden communication lines connecting human space to dozens of worlds throughout the Empire's territory. For years, humanity had been using their advanced technology to support underground resistance movements, guerrilla fighters, and liberation armies that the Empire thought had been completely destroyed. Every species you conquered sent out final distress calls before they fell, Dr. Aaron continued. We received those calls, analyzed them, and eventually made contact with the survivors. We have been building a galactic resistance network right under your noses using technology that your sensors cannot detect. Admiral Vexthar realized that the Empire was not just facing humanity. They were facing a secret alliance of dozens of species, all armed with human technology and all eager for revenge against their former oppressors. The primitive humans had built a network of allies throughout the galaxy, while the Empire remained completely unaware of what was happening in their own territory. The species you thought you had destroyed have been preparing for this moment, Admiral Mi-young said. When we give the signal, resistance fighters on every Empire world will begin liberation operations using weapons we have provided. Your occupation forces will find themselves fighting enemies equipped with technology that can manipulate time, space, and reality itself. The humans had turned the Empire's own expansion against them. Every conquered world had become a potential base for human-supported resistance movements. The Empire's vast territory, which they had thought was their greatest strength, was actually riddled with hidden enemies waiting for the right moment to strike. So you see, Admiral, Commander Sung-woo said with the same gentle amusement that had started this entire conversation, we found your ultimatum funny because you fundamentally misunderstood the situation. You thought you were conquering a primitive species with a few dozen simple ships. Instead, you walked into a trap that has been decades in the making. Admiral Vexithar looked around his command center one final time. His officers were staring at their instruments in shock and fear, watching energy readings that their science could not explain and detecting ships that existed in dimensions they had never imagined. The mighty Galactic Empire, conqueror of 847 species, had been outmaneuvered by a civilization they had dismissed as primitive. What do you want? Vexithar asked quietly. Admiral Mi-young's expression became serious for the first time in their conversation. We want you to go home, Admiral. We want the Empire to withdraw to your original home system and release all the species you have conquered. We want you to leave them alone and let them rebuild their civilizations in peace. And if we refuse? Vexthar asked, though he already knew he had no choice. If you refuse, Mi-young said calmly, we will not destroy you. We will do something much worse. We will simply disappear. Humanity and all our allies will phase into dimensional space where you cannot follow us. We will leave you alone in a galaxy full of very angry former subjects who now possess technology that can rewrite the laws of physics. The threat was more terrifying than any promise of destruction could have been. The Empire would find themselves isolated in a hostile galaxy, surrounded by enemies they had created and armed with weapons they could not understand or counter. They would face the same choice they had given to hundreds of other species: surrender or be destroyed. You have 72 hours to begin your withdrawal, Admiral Mi-young said, echoing the Empire's own ultimatum back to them. We suggest you use that time wisely. As the communication ended, Admiral Vexthar heard something he had not expected to hear again. The humans were laughing once more, but this time it was not the cruel laughter of victors gloating over their enemies. It was the warm laughter of people who had played an elaborate practical joke and were pleased with how well it had worked out. The Empire's invasion fleet began its long journey home, carrying with them the knowledge that they were no longer the most powerful force in the galaxy. Behind them, human ships continued to phase in and out of normal space, appearing and disappearing like friendly ghosts waving goodbye. And across the galaxy, on worlds that had been conquered long ago, resistance fighters looked up at the stars and began to laugh as well. The Galactic Empire had finally learned what it felt like to be the smaller, weaker species facing an ultimatum from someone much more powerful than themselves. The age of empire conquest was over, ended not by violence or destruction. The Empire's scientists worked frantically at their crystal control panels, trying to recalibrate their sensors to understand what they were really facing. What they discovered made Admiral Vexthar wish he had never heard of the human species. The few hundred primitive ships his fleet had detected were not even a tiny part of humanity's actual military force. As the Empire's instruments adjusted to scan higher dimensions and folded space, the true scope of the human fleet became visible. Thousands upon thousands of vessels existed in layers of reality that the Empire had never known were possible to access. The ships were arranged in perfect formations that extended through multiple dimensions, creating a defensive network that surrounded not just Earth but the entire human region of space. "Admiral," his chief science officer reported with terror in his voice, "our new scans indicate the presence of over 50,000 human vessels. They are distributed across 11 different dimensional layers. Most of their fleet has been watching us since we entered this star system, but they exist in spaces where our weapons cannot reach them." Admiral Vexthar felt something he had not experienced in centuries of conquest: genuine fear. The Empire's invasion fleet of 1,000 ships had seemed overwhelmingly powerful when they departed for human space. Now they were revealed to be a small scouting party that had wandered into the territory of a civilization far more advanced than anything the Empire had ever encountered. Admiral Mi Young's face appeared on the main communication screen of every Empire ship simultaneously. She looked calm and professional, like someone conducting a business meeting rather than a military confrontation. Behind her, the bridge of her command vessel showed technology that seemed to blend science and art into something beautiful and terrifying. "Admiral Vexthar," Mi Young said politely, "I think it is time we had an honest conversation. My name is Admiral Mi Young of the United Earth Defense Force, and I have been watching your Empire's expansion for quite some time. We know exactly how your military operates, what your tactical doctrines are, and what you expected to find when you came here." She gestured to a holographic display that showed detailed information about the Empire's fleet composition, weapon systems, and battle strategies. The information was so accurate and complete that it included details that even some of Vexithar's own officers did not know. "We have been intercepting communications from the species you have conquered for the past 40 years, Mi Young continued. "Every time your Empire destroys a civilization, their final transmissions reach us eventually. We have learned from their mistakes, studied your methods, and prepared accordingly." Dr. Kyung Ho appeared on another screen, surrounded by displays, showing the Empire's complete military history. He had charts and graphs that tracked every battle the Empire had ever fought, analyzed every weapon they had ever used, and cataloged every tactic they had ever employed. "Your Empire follows very predictable patterns," Dr. Kyung Ho explained. "You arrive with overwhelming force, demand immediate surrender, and then either destroy or enslave the local population. You have used essentially the same strategy for over 500 years. This makes you very effective against species that are less advanced than you, but it also makes you very predictable to anyone who has time to study your methods." Captain Boram demonstrated just how well humanity understood the Empire's capabilities. Her ship, Incheon's Wrath, moved directly into the middle of the Empire fleet and stopped there, surrounded by hundreds of alien warships. The Empire vessels immediately opened fire with every weapon they possessed. Quantum disruptors, reality warping missiles, and energy beams that could slice through planets all struck the human ship at the same time. The combined firepower was enough to destroy a small moon, and it should have reduced any vessel to its component atoms in seconds. Instead, the weapons passed through Incheon's Wrath like it was not there at all. The ship existed in a state of controlled quantum superposition, simultaneously present and absent in normal space. The Empire's weapons could not hit something that was both there and not there at the same time. "Quantum superposition," Boram explained cheerfully while Empire weapons continued to fire uselessly at her ship. "We can exist in multiple probability states simultaneously until we choose to collapse the waveform. Your weapons are hitting us in some realities and missing us in others. Since we get to choose which reality we want to experience, we simply choose the ones where your shots miss." The demonstration continued as Boram's ship began to return fire. But instead of using conventional weapons, Inchan's Wrath deployed something the Empire had never seen before: weaponized mathematics. The ship fired equations directly at Empire vessels, mathematical formulas that redefined the physical laws in the space around the target ships. One Empire cruiser suddenly found itself in an area where pi equaled exactly 3 instead of its normal value. This small change in the fundamental mathematics of reality caused the ship's circular components to no longer fit together properly. The vessel came apart like a jigsaw puzzle with pieces that no longer matched. Another Empire ship experienced an area where the normal relationship between mass and energy had been altered. The ship's own mass became a source of unlimited energy, causing it to glow brighter and brighter until the crew had to abandon ship before it became a miniature star. "We weaponized mathematics itself," Boram said proudly. "We discovered that if you can change the basic mathematical relationships that govern reality, you can make anything happen. We can make 2 + 2 = 5 in a small area of space, and suddenly nothing in that area behaves the way it should." Admiral Vexthar realized that his empire was not facing a military force in any conventional sense. They were confronting a species that had learned to rewrite the fundamental rules of existence itself. The Empire's weapons, no matter how powerful, were useless against enemies who could change the basic laws that made those weapons function. "How long have you known we were coming?" Vexthar asked, though he was not sure he wanted to hear the answer. Admiral Mi-young smiled in a way that made the alien admiral feel very small and foolish. "We detected the Empire's expansion pattern 37 years ago, when your forces conquered the Helion system. Our long-range sensors observed the battle, and our computers calculated your most likely path of expansion. We determined that you would reach human space in 35 to 40 years, depending on how much resistance you encountered along the way." She brought up another display showing a 3-dimensional map of the galaxy. Red lines showed the Empire's historical expansion and blue lines showed the predictions human computers had made decades earlier. The predictions were accurate to within a few months. "We have spent nearly 4 decades preparing for your arrival," Mi-young continued. "Every human colony has been fortified. Every human ship has been equipped with technology specifically designed to counter your weapons and tactics. We have run computer simulations of this battle thousands of times, testing different strategies and outcomes." Captain Wu Jin of the stealth vessel. Dagu's shadow provided the final piece of information that broke Admiral Vexthar's spirit completely. Wu Jin's ship had been following the Empire fleet for months without being detected, studying their systems and learning their weaknesses. "We should also mention that we have been inside your ships," Wu Jin said casually. "Our nanotechnology infiltrated your vessels weeks ago. Every critical system in your fleet has been quietly modified by self-replicating machines that are too small for your sensors to detect. We could shut down your entire fleet right now if we wanted to." To prove his point, Wu Jin caused the lights on every Empire ship to flicker in perfect synchronization. Then he made their gravity generators turn off and on in a pattern that spelled out hello in Morse code. The demonstration was playful rather than threatening, but it proved that humanity had complete control over the Empire's most essential systems. "We do not want to destroy you," Admiral Mi-young said gently. "We could have disabled your entire fleet before you even knew we were here. We could have made your ships forget how to function, or transported your crews to empty space, or convinced your computers that reality was completely different than it actually is. But we chose to talk instead of fight, because we believe that most conflicts can be resolved through understanding, rather than violence." Admiral Vexthar looked around his command center and saw the faces of his officers. They were all staring at him, waiting for orders, but what orders could he possibly give? The Empire's mighty invasion fleet had become a group of helpless spectators, watching a demonstration of technology they could not hope to understand or counter. The humans had turned the greatest military force in the galaxy into an audience for a lecture about the dangers of underestimating other species. And they had done it without killing a single Empire soldier, which somehow made their superiority even more obvious and humiliating. Back on Earth, Engineer He-jin sat in a control room deep underground. The room was filled with screens and buttons that controlled systems scattered across the entire solar system. Most people on Earth did not know this room existed, and even fewer knew what the systems actually did. Heijin had been waiting for this moment for 15 years, ever since humanity first detected the Galactic Empire's expansion toward their region of space. The message from Captain Dongwu appeared on her main screen in simple letters, "Demonstration authorized." Heijin smiled and began pressing buttons in a specific sequence. Each button activated systems that had been hidden for decades, disguised as ordinary space stations and mining platforms. Around Earth, large structures that everyone thought were simple communication satellites suddenly began to unfold like metal flowers. What had appeared to be normal space debris revealed itself to be sophisticated machinery that had been sleeping for years, waiting for this exact moment. The camouflage was so good that even Earth's own population had no idea what was really floating above their heads. In space near Jupiter, Captain Subin stood on the bridge of humanity's actual flagship. The ship was called Gangnam Storm, and it was nothing like what the Empire's sensors had detected. While the aliens watched what they thought were primitive human vessels, the real human fleet had been hiding in folded space, existing in dimensions that the Empire did not even know were possible to access. "All stations report ready," Subin announced to her crew. "Begin Phase 1 of the demonstration." The Gangnam Storm began to materialize in normal space. It did not simply appear like other ships might when they dropped out of faster-than-light travel. Instead, it seemed to grow into existence, starting as a shimmer in space and gradually becoming more solid and real. The ship was enormous, easily as large as the Empire's biggest vessels, but it looked like it was made of liquid metal and captured starlight. Lieutenant Jin Woo worked at a control station that looked like a work of art rather than military equipment. The controls responded to his thoughts as much as his touch, because human technology had learned to interface directly with the human brain. He activated what humans casually called a gravity manipulator. Though the name did not really describe what the device actually did, the weapon targeted one of the Empire's smaller scout ships, a vessel that was still larger than most human cities. The scout ship's shields were supposed to be able to stop any attack, but Jinwoo's weapon did not attack the ship directly. Instead, it attacked time itself. Admiral Vexthar watched from his flagship as something impossible happened to his scout vessel. The ship began to age rapidly, like someone was playing a recording of its entire future in fast forward. Metal that had been shiny and new became old and rusty in seconds. Crystal components that had been clear became cloudy and cracked. Systems that had been built to last for thousands of years suddenly experienced all of that time at once. Within 30 seconds, the scout ship crumbled into dust. It had not been destroyed by weapons or explosions. It had simply been forced to experience its entire lifetime in less than a minute. And like all things, it could not survive the passage of so much time compressed into such a short moment. "Impossible," Vexthar whispered, staring at the empty space where his ship had been. "No weapon can manipulate time itself." On his tablet, Captain Dongwu showed the Admiral new information. The hologram displayed equations and diagrams that explained how the weapon worked, though the mathematics were far beyond what the Empire's scientists understood. "Time and space are connected," Dongwu explained patiently, like a teacher talking to a young student. "When you learn to fold space to travel faster than light, you also learn that you can fold time. We can make time move faster or slower in small areas. We can make it flow backward or forward. Your ship just experienced what we call temporal acceleration. It lived its entire future life in a few seconds." Commander Yu Jin appeared on the communication screen from another human vessel. She was smiling the same way all the humans seemed to smile, like she was enjoying a wonderful game. Behind her, the bridge of her ship showed technology that seemed to be part machine and part something else entirely. "We should also mention," Yujin said cheerfully, "that faster-than-light travel was just the beginning for us. Once we understood how to manipulate space-time, we realized we could manipulate other fundamental forces too. Gravity, electromagnetism, the strong and weak nuclear forces. We can change the basic rules that govern how matter and energy behave." To demonstrate, Yujin activated another weapon system. This one targeted a medium-sized Empire warship that was trying to move away from the human fleet. But instead of aging the ship or destroying it, the weapon did something much more subtle and terrifying. The Empire ship simply stopped working, not because it had been damaged, but because the fundamental forces that held its atoms together had been temporarily altered in the space around the vessel. The ship's nuclear reactors stopped producing energy because the strong nuclear force had been weakened in that area. The ship's electronics stopped functioning because electromagnetism was no longer behaving the way it was supposed to. The Empire crew found themselves floating in a dead ship in the middle of space. Their life support systems were not broken, but they could not function because the universe itself had been changed around them. They were completely helpless, trapped inside their own vessel. "We can turn off physics," Yujin explained casually, "in small areas for short periods of time. We can make gravity stop working or make atoms forget how to stick together, or convince light that it should travel backward. It is very useful for dealing with aggressive neighbors." Admiral Vexthar's command center had become chaos. His officers were shouting reports about energy readings that their instruments could not measure, and phenomena that their science could not explain. The Empire's most advanced computers were trying to analyze what the humans were doing, but they kept producing error messages because they could not find words to describe what they were observing. "How many ships do you actually have?" Vexthar demanded. Dr. Kyung-ho answered that question by appearing on every screen in the Empire fleet at the same time. He was an older human with gray hair and kind eyes, sitting in what looked like a laboratory filled with floating holographic displays. He looked like someone's grandfather, not like a military leader, but his voice carried the authority of someone who understood secrets that others could not even imagine. "We have been building ships in higher dimensions for the past 60 years, Dr. Kyung-ho said. "Most of our fleet exists in spaces that your sensors cannot detect, because those spaces are not part of normal reality. We can bring our ships into your dimension when we need them, but most of the time they stay in places where physics works differently." As he spoke, more human ships began to appear around the Empire fleet. They materialized from what looked like empty space, phasing into normal reality like ghosts becoming solid. Each ship was different from the others, as if human engineers had been experimenting with different ways to break the laws of physics. Some ships seemed to be made of light itself, glowing with colors that should not have been possible. Others looked like they were constructed from folded space, their hulls bending reality around them in ways that hurt to look at directly. A few ships appeared to be partially transparent, existing only halfway in normal space while the rest of their mass remained somewhere else entirely. "Your sensors detected a few hundred primitive vessels," Dr. Kyung-ho continued. "Those were just our construction ships, the tools we use to build things in normal space. Our actual military fleet consists of approximately 50,000 vessels, most of which operate in dimensions that your science has not yet discovered." Admiral Vexthar realized that his mighty invasion fleet was not facing a few dozen primitive ships. They were surrounded by an armada that existed in places where the Empire's weapons could not reach and operated using principles that the Empire's scientists did not understand. But the most terrifying part was that the humans were still being polite. They had demonstrated power that could easily destroy the entire Empire fleet, but they had been careful to disable rather than destroy, to show rather than kill. They were treating the Empire like children who had wandered into a dangerous area, gently showing them why they should leave. "We do not want to hurt anyone," Captain Subin said from the bridge of Gangnam Storm. "But we also cannot allow the Empire to continue conquering innocent species. You have a choice to make, Admiral. You can accept that humanity is not as primitive as you thought, or you can continue to believe your own intelligence reports and see what happens next." The human ships waited patiently while Admiral Vexthar tried to understand what he had gotten himself into. The laughter had finally stopped, replaced by a quiet confidence that was somehow even more unnerving than the amusement had been. Admiral Vexthar could not sleep. He walked around his command center while his officers worked at their crystal displays, trying to understand why the humans kept laughing. It had been 6 hours since the Empire gave their ultimatum, and the idea, strange sound had not stopped. Every time his ships listened to human communications, all they could hear was laughter mixed with normal conversation, like the humans were having the most fun day of their lives. The Admiral's tactical officer, a tall being with 4 arms and silver skin, approached him with a worried expression. The officer's name was too difficult for human tongues to say, so the humans would have called him something simple. He carried a glowing tablet that showed charts and numbers about human brain activity. "Admiral," the officer said, "our mind-reading devices show that the humans are not actually insane. Their brain patterns are normal, even happy. They seem to find our ultimatum genuinely funny, not frightening." Vexthar's eyes changed color from blue to red, which meant he was angry. In all his years of conquest, he had never seen anything like this. When the Empire appeared with their massive fleet, other species usually responded in predictable ways. They either fought desperately, tried to negotiate, or surrendered immediately. Laughter was not supposed to be possible. "Perhaps they do not understand the power we possess," Vexthar said. "Show them a demonstration. Destroy one of their outer moon bases. That will stop their laughing and make them take us seriously." But, before the Admiral could give the order to fire, something unexpected happened. A small human ship approached the Empire fleet. It was tiny compared to the massive alien vessels, like a mouse walking up to a group of elephants. The ship moved slowly and broadcast a message on all frequencies. "This is Captain Dongwu of the Busan Runner," a human voice said through the communication system. "We would like to request a meeting with Admiral Vexthar. We promise we are not here to fight or cause trouble. We just want to talk and maybe explain why everyone is laughing so much." Even while asking for a serious meeting, Captain Dongwu's voice had little bits of laughter in it, like he was trying very hard not to laugh, but could not quite stop himself. This made Vexthar even more confused and angry. The Empire's standard procedure was to destroy any ship that approached their fleet without permission. But Vexthar was curious now. He wanted to understand what was wrong with these strange humans and why they were not afraid of the most powerful military force in the galaxy. Maybe if he talked to one of them face to face, he could figure out what was making them act so strangely. "Permission granted," Vexthar announced. "The human captain may come aboard our flagship. But if this is some kind of trick, his ship and his entire species will pay the price." Captain Dongwu's ship docked with the Empire's flagship through a special tunnel that connected the two vessels. When Dongwu stepped out of his ship, the alien soldiers were surprised by how normal he looked. They had expected someone who looked scary or crazy, but Dongwu just looked like a regular human person wearing a simple blue uniform. He was not very tall, had black hair, and carried a small bag with him. He smiled at the alien guards and said hello in a friendly way. The guards brought Dongwu to Admiral Vexthar's private meeting room. The room was big and made entirely of crystal, so you could see space and stars all around you. Vexthar sat behind a desk that looked like it was carved from a single giant diamond. He was much bigger than Dongwu, with purple skin and 6 arms that ended in sharp claws. His species had evolved on a world where everything tried to eat everything else, so they looked quite frightening. But Dongwu did not seem frightened at all. He sat down in the chair across from Vexthar and opened his bag. He pulled out a small device that looked like a tablet computer and set it on the crystal desk between them. "Thank you for agreeing to meet with me, Admiral," Dongwu said politely. "I hope we can clear up this confusion quickly. My people sent me here because we think there has been a big misunderstanding about who we are and what we can do." Vexthar leaned forward, his 6 arms resting on the desk. His red eyes studied the small human carefully. Dongwu looked so peaceful and calm that it made the Admiral even more suspicious. In Vexthar's experience, only very dangerous people could stay calm when facing the full power of the Galactic Empire. "Explain this misunderstanding," Vexthar demanded, "and explain why your people laugh at our ultimatum like it is some kind of joke. Do you not realize that we have conquered nearly every species in this galaxy? Do you not understand that your tiny ships and primitive weapons cannot stand against our might?" Dongwu nodded thoughtfully, like a teacher listening to a student who had gotten the right answer but missed something important. He touched his tablet, and it projected a hologram into the air above the desk. The hologram showed images of human history, starting with old sailing ships and moving forward through time. That is exactly the misunderstanding I came to talk about, Dongwu said, and there was still a little bit of laughter in his voice. You see, Admiral, your people have been watching humanity for quite some time. You learned about us by listening to the signals we broadcast into space. But there was a problem with the signals you chose to study. The hologram showed more images now. There were pictures of human movies about old wars, video games where people fought with guns and tanks, and television shows about soldiers using simple weapons. All of these things looked like documentaries to someone who did not understand human culture. Your intelligence services intercepted what you thought were historical documentaries about human warfare. Dongwu continued. You saw our movies about World War II and thought they showed our current military capabilities. You saw our video games about modern soldiers and assumed that was how we still fight today. You have been preparing to face a species that fights with gunpowder weapons and metal vehicles. Vexithar's eyes changed from red to yellow, which meant he was confused. He looked at the hologram images more carefully. They showed humans using weapons that seemed very primitive compared to what the Empire had. Chemical explosives, kinetic projectiles, and vehicles that moved by burning fuel. These were the kinds of weapons that species used before they learned how to manipulate energy and matter at the atomic level. Are you saying these images do not show your current military strength? Vexthar asked. That is exactly what I am saying, Dongwu replied, and now he was smiling widely. Those images are from our entertainment industry. They are stories we tell for fun about wars that happened hundreds of years ago. They are not documentaries about our current capabilities at all. The Admiral's tactical computers began working faster, trying to process this new information. If the humans were not still using primitive weapons, then what were they actually using? His sensors had detected human ships in the area, but they seemed small and weak compared to Empire vessels. Their energy signatures were barely registering on his instruments. Then show me, Vexithar said, his voice becoming more dangerous. Show me what weapons humanity actually possesses. Show me why you think you can laugh at the Galactic Empire. Dongwu's smile became even bigger. He touched his tablet again and sent a message to the human fleet waiting nearby. The message was very short, just 2 words. But they would change everything that was about to happen. Demonstration authorized, the message said. Outside in space, the human ships that had been floating quietly near the edge of the solar system suddenly began to change. Panels slid away from their hulls, revealing technology that the Empire's sensors had not detected before. The ships themselves began to shimmer and shift, like they were not entirely solid. Admiral Vexthar's command center immediately filled with alarms and flashing lights. His officers shouted reports about energy readings that did not make sense and ships that seemed to be appearing and disappearing from their sensors. The Empire's most advanced detection systems were telling them that reality itself was being changed around the human vessels. What is happening? Vexthar demanded, standing up so fast that his chair fell over backward. Dongwu was still sitting calmly at the crystal desk, watching the Admiral's panic with obvious amusement. He looked like someone watching a magic show where he already knew how all the tricks worked. What is happening, Dongwu said, is that you're about to see what human weapons actually look like. The entertainment broadcasts you intercepted were about our past, Admiral. They showed you how we used to fight back when we were still learning about the universe. But we have learned quite a lot since then. The hologram above the desk changed to show new images. These were not from movies or games. They showed human scientists working with equations that the Empire's computers could not understand, and laboratories where people manipulated forces that should not have been possible to control. We solved faster-than-light travel differently than you did, Dongwu explained. Your ships move through space very quickly. Our ships learn to fold space itself so they do not have to move at all. Once you understand how to bend space-time, many other things become possible. Gravity manipulation, time dilation, dimensional engineering, the kinds of weapons that work by changing the rules of physics instead of just hitting things very hard. The space around Earth's solar system had never seen anything like it before. 1,000 massive ships appeared out of nowhere, each one bigger than any mountain on Earth. They moved in perfect lines across the black sky, their crystal hulls, catching starlight and throwing it back in rainbow colors. The ships looked like they were made of glass and metal mixed together, with sharp edges that could cut through space itself. Captain Tejo stood on the bridge of Soul's Pride, watching the alien fleet through the big windows. He held his favorite coffee mug in his hands, the one with a picture of his dog on it. The coffee was still hot and smelled like home. Behind him, his crew worked at their stations, checking numbers and talking in quiet voices. Nobody seemed scared, which was strange because they were looking at the biggest threat humanity had ever seen. The alien ships stopped moving when they reached the edge of human space. They formed a wall of crystal and metal that stretched as far as anyone could see. Each ship was the size of a small moon, and they had weapons that glowed with purple light. The energy coming from those weapons was so strong that it made the hair on Tejo's arms stand up, even through the ship's shields. A message came through on all the human communication channels at the same time. The voice was cold and mechanical, speaking through a computer that translated the alien words into human language. The voice belonged to Admiral Vexthar of the Galactic Empire, and he did not sound like he wanted to be friends. Primitive species of the third planet. The voice said, "You will listen and obey. We are the Galactic Empire, rulers of this galaxy. We have conquered 847 species across the stars. Your time as a free people is over." Tejo took another sip of his coffee and smiled. The alien voice continued talking, listing all the terrible things that would happen if humans did not give up. The Empire had weapons that could destroy planets, ships that could move faster than light, and soldiers that had never lost a battle. They had been conquering worlds for thousands of years, and they were very good at it. "You have exactly 72 hours to surrender completely," Vexthar's voice announced. "All your ships must power down their weapons. All your leaders must come to our flagship to sign papers that make you part of our empire. If you refuse, we will turn every human world into burning rock and ash. There will be no second chance." The message ended, and the bridge of Soul's Pride became very quiet. Tejo looked around at his crew, and they looked back at him. Then something funny happened. Someone in the back started to laugh. It was just a small laugh at first, like when you hear a good joke. Then someone else started laughing too. Soon the whole bridge was filled with the sound of people laughing, and they could not stop. Tejo pressed a button on his chair that connected him to the rest of the human fleet. He could hear laughter coming from every ship. The crews of the other vessels were all laughing too, like they had just heard the funniest thing in the world. The laughter spread from ship to ship, from station to station, until every human in space was laughing at the same time. Back on Earth, Admiral Mi-young sat in a big room full of important people. The United Earth Council was meeting to talk about the alien threat, and the room was filled with world leaders, generals, and scientists. Big screens on the wall showed pictures of the alien fleet and numbers that told how powerful their weapons were. The numbers were very scary. Each alien ship had enough firepower to destroy all the nuclear weapons that humans had ever made. Some of the council members looked worried. They talked about how many people would die if the aliens attacked. They talked about whether humanity should surrender to save lives. They talked about running away to hide somewhere in deep space. But Mi-young just sat in her chair and smiled, like she knew something they did not. When the council members finished talking, Mi-young stood up. She was not very tall, but when she stood up, everyone in the room stopped talking and looked at her. She had been in charge of Earth's defenses for 10 years, and she had never lost a battle. People trusted her to keep them safe. "The aliens want us to be scared," Mi-young said in a calm voice. "They think we will panic and beg them not to hurt us. They think we are just primitive humans with simple weapons and small ships. They are about to learn that they are very wrong." She walked over to a special communication device that only she could use. It was connected to secret systems all across human space, systems that most people did not know existed. She pressed her hand against the screen, and it scanned her fingerprints and checked her eyes to make sure she was really Mi-young. "Operation Giggle is now active," she said into the device. Those 3 words went out to every human military base, every hidden station, and every secret facility that humanity had built over the past 50 years. In response to her words, something amazing started to happen. All across human space, people began to laugh. Not just the military crews, but everyone. Farmers on colony worlds stopped their work and started laughing. Scientists in laboratories put down their experiments and laughed until their stomachs hurt. Children in schools heard their teachers laughing and started laughing too, even though they did not understand why. The laughter was not mean or cruel. It was the kind of laughter that comes when someone tells you they are going to scare you. With a mouse when you have been living with lions your whole life, it was the laughter of people who knew something that nobody else knew, and that something was about to make their enemies very surprised. Admiral Vexthar sat in his command center on the biggest ship in the alien fleet. The walls of his ship were made of crystal that showed him everything happening in space around him. He could see the small human ships in the distance, and he could hear their communications. He expected to hear crying or begging or angry threats. Instead, all he could hear was laughter. This had never happened before. In 500 years of conquering other species, Vexthar had seen many different reactions to the Empire's ultimatum. Some species tried to fight and died quickly. Some species tried to run away and were caught and destroyed. Some species surrendered immediately and became slaves. But no species had ever responded with laughter. Vexthar's scientists worked at their stations trying to understand what was happening. They scanned human brains from far away and studied the patterns of their thoughts. The scientists told Vexthar that the humans seemed to be having some kind of mental breakdown. The stress of facing the mighty Galactic Empire had broken their minds, and now they could only laugh because they had gone crazy with fear. This explanation made sense to Vexthar. He had seen other weak species break down when they realized how powerful the Empire was. The laughter would stop soon, and then would come the crying and the begging. Then the humans would surrender, just like all the others. But the laughter did not stop. It went on, echoing across the radio waves between the human ships. And in that laughter, there was something that Vexthar did not understand. It was not the laughter of people who were scared or crazy. It was the laughter of people who were genuinely amused, like they had just heard the best joke in the universe.